At the moment, Alpha King Adrian Blackwood slid the ancestral Luna ring onto Evelyn Hart's finger. The moonstone should have blazed silver beneath the wedding torches. Instead, it stayed cold. A hairline crack crawled across its surface, while 300 nobles cheered around them. Evelyn felt the fracture before she saw it. Adrian tightened his grip, smiling for the crowd, but his thumb pressed hard enough to warn her silent. The great hall smelled of white roses, hot wax, and roasted meat. Musicians played beneath banners bearing the joined crests of Nightfall and Moonmere. Evelyn kept her chin lifted, though unease moved beneath her ribs. The ring had recognized every Hart woman for 9 generations. It had never cracked. Across the dais, Celeste Vane watched with lowered lashes and a smile too controlled to be innocent, patient, or surprised there. When Adrian turned to accept the royal seal, Evelyn whispered, "Why is the stone dark?" His jaw shifted once. "Old magic is temperamental," he murmured without meeting her eyes. Then Elder Gideon Vane called Adrian toward the council corridor for a private signature. Celeste followed half a step behind. Evelyn watched the 3 of them disappear while the choir rose around her like a wall, built to keep questions out. She waited 10 breaths, then lifted the hem of her wedding gown and slipped behind the velvet drapery bordering the dais. The corridor beyond was narrow, dim, and empty, except for the low voices leaking through a half-closed council door. Evelyn stopped when she heard her own name. "By winter's end, Moonmere belongs to Nightfall," Gideon said. "After that, the bride becomes unnecessary." Every muscle in Evelyn's body went still. Celeste's perfume drifted through the opening, jasmine sweet enough to turn bitter in Evelyn's throat. "And my position?" Celeste asked. Adrian answered after a pause too short to contain regret. "Once the transfer is sealed, the council will declare Evelyn mentally unfit. You will take the Luna seat." Gideon chuckled. "The cleanest bargain this council has ever bought." Evelyn pressed one palm over the other to stop both hands shaking. For months, Adrian had touched her cheek in private and called her his equal. He had praised her grain roots, borrowed her treaty language, and promised Moonmere would remain hers. Now the truth stood plainly behind a wooden door. He had studied her devotion only to price it. Evelyn felt pain strike deep, but no tear reached her eyes. Grief could wait. Dawn would not wait for anyone betrayed tonight. She returned to the bridal chamber through a servant's passage and locked the door behind her. From beneath the vanity, she pulled the duplicate blood contract prepared by her mother's former archivist. The royal seal gleamed black beside Adrian's signature. Hidden beneath the final clause was the sentence he believed she had never read. Title transfer became permanent only after the Dawn Oath. Evelyn removed the cracked ring, slowly alone. When she stepped back into the great hall, the musicians faltered one by one. Adrian stood at the altar, irritation flashing before concern could replace it. Evelyn crossed the marble floor and laid the Luna ring upon the contract. "I invoke the right of first light," she declared. Gasps rippled outward. This union was obtained through concealed intent. "I refuse the Dawn Oath." Adrian stared at her in disbelief alone. "Evelyn," he warned, lowering his voice as if tenderness could still command her, "do not humiliate us over something you misunderstood." She met his gaze and saw fear there, not of losing her, but of losing Moonmere. "You should have feared humiliation before pricing your bride." She turned from the altar. Gideon snapped his fingers, and royal guards sealed the eastern doors with crossed spears. The celebration died instantly there. Adrian descended the dais slowly. "The contract is signed. You are property of the crown until this council rules otherwise." Evelyn raised her empty hand. "Then let them rule before sunrise." The eastern gates opened against the guard's command, and frost swept through the hall. Rowan Ashford crossed the threshold, took his place beside Evelyn, and said, "To arrest her, you must first break faith with another king tonight, Adrian." The frost that entered the great hall did not come from the open gates alone. It rolled from Rowan Ashford in a quiet wave, carrying the scent of cedar, iron, and northern snow. Guards lowered their spears without meaning to. Adrian stopped 3 steps from Evelyn, his expression hardening as Rowan removed one black glove and displayed the sovereign sigil burned into his palm before every witness under Nightfall's banners. "By the sovereign sanctuary invited into this palace," Rowan said, "Evelyn Hart remains under my protection until tomorrow's sunrise, or until a lawful trial begins. Adrian's wolf flashed gold behind his eyes. "She is my wife." Rowan glanced toward the cracked ring resting on the contract. "Not yet. Read your own law. Blood signed. Ring unrecognized. Dawn oath incomplete. Your crown does not erase the sequence it swore to defend." Adrian looked toward Gideon, but the elder's silence betrayed him. Evelyn saw calculation flicker across every face. They had expected a grieving bride, not a sovereign witness. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Come upstairs. We can settle this privately." Evelyn's chest tightened as the unfinished bond pulled toward him. She did not move. "Privacy is where you sold me," she replied. "The law will hear what love was denied." Rowan did not touch her. He merely turned, forcing the guards to choose between their king's anger and an ancient treaty. Captain Marcus Reed broke first. He lowered his spear and ordered the eastern passage cleared. The other guards followed. Adrian's fury struck the hall like thunder, but Evelyn walked through it without bending. Behind her, wedding music remained unfinished, one trembling violin sustaining a note no musician dared resolve. The Frostfang embassy stood across the river, protected by neutral stone and Rowan's iron guard. By the time Evelyn reached its healer's chamber, the bond had become a wire tightening around her ribs. Naomi Pierce, Nightfall's royal healer, had followed under sanctuary after seeing Gideon order the gates sealed. She placed a moonstone pendant against Evelyn's sternum. "Severance before completion is legal," Naomi warned, "but your body will expect death." "Do it," Evelyn said. Naomi cut Evelyn's palm with a silver lancet and pressed the blood against the pendant. The room vanished beneath white pain. Evelyn folded over, a cry trapped behind clenched teeth as the bond tore strand by strand. Across the river, Adrian felt it too. He gripped the balcony until stone cracked beneath his fingers. Yet his thought was not that she suffered, but that she escaped. The severance completed with a sound only wolves could hear. Evelyn's inner wolf howled once, then fell frighteningly silent. Blood dotted the white sheet beneath her hand. Rowan remained outside the chamber until Naomi opened the door. When he entered, he kept several feet between them. "Your decision is recorded," he said. "No one can restore the bond without your consent." Evelyn managed breath. "Then make certain nobody rewrites tonight." Before sunrise, a council notice arrived, bearing Gideon's seal. It accused Evelyn of stealing the royal seal, conspiring with Frostfang, and abandoning Nightfall during a binding ceremony. Rowan handed it to her. "They are building a cage from paper." Evelyn studied the ink. One charge referenced a seal she had never possessed. Another cited a military map stored only inside Adrian's private archive. Someone had prepared the accusations before wedding. As dawn thinned the darkness, Naomi brought the Luna ring from the contract box. The crack had widened. When Evelyn touched it, the moonstone lifted from its silver setting, without heat or force. Beneath it lay a symbol etched into the metal, a rising sun enclosed by a broken crown. Rowan's composure shifted now. He recognized the mark, though he did not yet understand why it answered Evelyn's blood alone. Footsteps approached. Elias Grant entered in a gray cloak, summoned by Rowan before severance began. Age bent his shoulders, but not his gaze. He saw the symbol, then Evelyn's bleeding palm. The old archivist dropped to one knee so quickly his cane struck the floor. Everyone froze. Elias bowed his head before Evelyn and whispered, "That is not the mark of a Luna. It is the seal of a queen." Frostfang Dominion received Evelyn beneath a sky the color of hammered steel. Snow crowded the fortress walls, swallowing every sound except the measured steps of Rowan's iron guard. She wore a borrowed black cloak over her torn wedding gown, the severance wound burning beneath the moonstone pendant. No one bowed, no one welcomed her. At the council doors, Captain Mara Stone blocked the entrance, her expression sharpened by suspicion alone. "Nightfall calls her a traitor," Mara said. "Bringing her inside risks every treaty we hold." Rowan removed his gloves and placed the council notice on the table. "Then we will test the accusation against facts." His gaze moved to Evelyn. "You asked for records, not sympathy. You will have both the ledgers and one day." Evelyn ignored the insult hidden inside the offer. "Bring inventories, river maps, and supplier contracts." The council chamber smelled of coal smoke, wet wool, and distrust. 3 ministers watched Evelyn like a thief. She opened the first pack ledger, and immediately noticed silver ink layered over older entries. The books claimed Frostfang's northern warehouses held enough grain for 8 weeks. Delivery schedules told another story. Wagons arrived full, departed empty, yet no village receipts existed. Someone had fed the council numbers instead of feeding wolves. Rowan leaned quietly over the table. Could the receipts have been lost? Evelyn turned the ledger toward him and tapped 3 identical signatures. Ink fades differently in cold storage. These were written together, after the deliveries. Mara frowned. By whom? Evelyn followed the payment codes through 2 auxiliary books until one merchant name repeated. Harrow Vale Trading. Its owner had died 9 years earlier, but it still collected royal silver. Evelyn requested access to the warehouses before anyone could warn their keepers. Rowan granted it, though Mara insisted on accompanying them. At the first storehouse, snow had drifted against doors supposedly opened that morning. Inside, shelves stood bare beneath fresh inventory seals. Evelyn knelt beside a wheel track, frozen in the mud, and measured its depth with 2 fingers. The grain was removed weeks ago. Yesterday's seals hide it now. The second warehouse held sick children instead of grain. Their healer house had begun mixing bark into porridge to stretch supplies. Evelyn's face changed when a boy offered her half his ration. She accepted it, broke the crust, then returned both pieces to him. Open the military reserve, she told Rowan. Mara stiffened. That violates winter protocol. Evelyn looked at the coughing children. Then your protocol has failed its people. Rowan held Mara's gaze for a second, then gave the order. By sunset, reserve wagons moved north under escort. Evelyn redirected river barges through a narrow channel normally closed until spring, using salt teams to break the ice. She rationed by household size, placed healers first, and required every delivery to carry paired signatures. No single official would control the chain again. Villages received food before darkness swallowed the roads. Back in the council chamber, Mara laid her sword on the table, not in surrender, but respect. You found in hours what our ministers missed for months. Evelyn closed the ledger. They did not miss it. Someone was paid to look away. Rowan studied her with a recognition that made her uneasy. He opened a locked drawer and removed 18 letters, each marked with the initials E.H. You wrote them. Evelyn touched the letter. She remembered advising a northern ruler how to stop small packs selling pups into debt service during famine. Adrian had dismissed her plan as sentimental. Rowan had implemented it. I did not know who answered, she admitted. I did, Rowan said. I did not know Nightfall's silent bride was the strategist. The praise hurt. Adrian had used every idea and buried her name beneath his crown. Mara brought the final payment book after midnight. Evelyn traced the transfers from Harrow Vale through 3 shell companies until the money reached a private military account controlled by Gideon Vane. Beside the largest withdrawal was a coded authorization symbol matching Celeste's family crest. Rowan's expression darkened. Evelyn found the final transaction, enough to purchase an army. Its date stopped her breath. The payment had cleared on her wedding morning. 3 days after the stolen grain was uncovered, Frostfang's border packs closed the northern road with wagons, chains, and sharpened pikes. Their leaders claimed Rowan had doubled protection taxes, while children starved. Snow swept between the opposing lines, erasing tracks but not anger. Evelyn stood beside Rowan beneath a fur cloak, the royal seal locked inside a leather case at her hip. Mara and 20 iron guards waited behind them. The largest border alpha, Tomas Greer, threw a tax notice at Rowan's boots. We paid once in autumn. Your collector returned in winter demanding double. Rowan picked up the paper without anger. Evelyn watched his jaw tighten at the Frostfang seal. The document looked official, yet the wax carried a faint ridge where another emblem had been scraped away. She asked for the original village minutes and payment receipts immediately. Inside a drafty meeting hall, elders spread brittle records across a scarred table. Evelyn compared dates, witness marks, and wagon counts. Every village had paid the lawful rate. A second demand appeared 2 weeks later, signed by Deputy Collector Corvin Hale. He did not raise your tax, Evelyn said. He created another one and kept it outside the royal books. Angry voices rose around her, like breaking ice that morning. Mara crossed her arms. Hale vanished yesterday. Evelyn slid 3 receipts together. The ink matched the falsified warehouse ledgers, and each payment had passed through Harrow Vale Trading before reaching Gideon Vane's private account. Rowan could have blamed a corrupt subordinate. Instead, he stepped before the crowded hall and removed his crown. "This theft happened beneath my authority," he said. "Therefore the failure is mine. I will repair it publicly." Silence followed, deeper than obedience. Rowan ordered every stolen coin returned from the royal treasury before sunset, with penalties paid to widows and healer houses first. Then he handed Evelyn the Frostfang seal. "Authorize the refunds," he said. The ministers stared. A foreign fugitive now held power over royal silver. Evelyn accepted only after adding a written limit. 60 days. Border restitution alone. Every order countersigned by Mara Stone. Later, in the empty council chamber, Evelyn pressed the seal into dark blue wax. The impression was clean, unlike Nightfall's broken promises. Rowan stood across the table, giving her space. "You trusted me with your crown," she said. "I trusted your conditions," he answered. Evelyn looked away. "I do not know who I am when nobody needs saving," Rowan replied quietly. "Then perhaps you deserve time to meet her yourself." The words unsettled her more than praise. Adrian had admired usefulness and called dependence love. Rowan had just accepted a boundary without punishment. Before Evelyn could answer, the chamber doors opened. Mara entered, carrying a black iron cylinder sealed with Nightfall wax. A royal courier crossed the pass under truce. Inside lay an extradition order, accusing Evelyn of treason, theft, and possession of military secrets. Adrian's signature burned at bottom. A second page demanded Rowan surrender her within 12 hours or be named an enemy of Nightfall. Evelyn read every line without blinking, though the severed bond scar throbbed beneath her ribs. "He is giving you a reason to abandon me," she said. Rowan took the notice, walked to the brazier, and held one corner above the flame. "No," he replied. "He is giving me evidence for a public trial." Rowan summoned his ministers, the border alphas, and Nightfall's courier. Before them all, he stamped the extradition order with a rejection seal. "Frostfang recognizes no private judgment disguised as law," he declared. "I demand a public pack trial under the 3 Crowns Accord. Evelyn Hart will appear as claimant, not prisoner." The courier paled. Mara gave Evelyn her first open smile since the fugitive entered Frostfang 3 days earlier. Night had fallen when Adrian's answer arrived by encrypted radio. His voice filled the council chamber, controlled enough to make the threat colder. "Rowan, you are sheltering my wife and stealing Nightfall property. If she does not return, I will come north and bring her home myself." Evelyn reached for the transmitter before Rowan could respond. Her voice never shook. "There is no home left for you to bring back." By the time Adrian returned to Nightfall, the first grain convoy had already stopped at the southern gate. The drivers presented contracts bearing Evelyn's name and refused to unload without the signature of Moonmere's lawful heir. Behind them, villagers shouted for bread, while soldiers argued over empty wagons. Adrian stood beneath the banners, listening as winter entered his kingdom not through snow, but through every system Evelyn had kept alive. The council chamber offered no relief. 3 supply captains accused one another of theft. 2 eastern packs threatened secession, and the healers demanded emergency access to Moonmere stores. Gideon Vane dismissed the panic as temporary. Celeste sat in Evelyn's former chair wearing silver silk, one hand resting possessively on the armrest. Adrian noticed the chair looked too large for her, though he hated himself for making the comparison at all. That evening, Gideon insisted the Luna ceremony proceed. "The pack needs stability," he said. Adrian knew the timing was brutal, yet he also knew canceling would look weak. The great hall filled under armed guard. Celeste approached the dais with a practiced tremble, her pale gown chosen to resemble innocence. When Adrian lifted the ring, the moonstone remained dull, colder than the silver setting around it in his unsteady hand. Celeste extended her left hand. "For Nightfall," she whispered. Adrian slid the ring over her finger. The stone flashed once, not silver but violent red. Celeste screamed as smoke rose from her skin. The ring tightened, burned a black circle around her knuckle, then tore itself free and struck the marble. 300 wolves watched it roll across the floor and stop at the empty place where Evelyn had stood. Whispers spread before Gideon could silence them. Celeste clutched her hand and accused Evelyn of cursing the ring from Frostfang. Adrian bent to retrieve it, but the moonstone turned opaque beneath his touch. Only when Marcus wrapped it in Evelyn's discarded wedding cloth did the heat fade. The beta looked at Adrian with something close to accusation. Magic does not lie merely because a council prefers another answer, my king. After midnight, Marcus entered Adrian's study, carrying a leather ledger swollen with inserted pages. It recorded every winter debt Evelyn had renegotiated, every medicine shipment she had diverted from royal banquets, and every border family she had fed from her personal allowance. Adrian recognized his own signatures, approving plans he had later presented as royal strategy. Evelyn's name appeared only in margins, written small enough to vanish beneath his seal. Adrian crossed to the adjoining room that had served as Evelyn's office. Maps still covered one wall, each route marked in her precise hand. A cup sat beside a stack of unanswered requests, its tea dried to a brown stain. He remembered demanding revisions the night before their wedding. He could not remember asking whether she had slept. The realization struck harder than bond sickness, because the wound was his. Celeste appeared in the doorway before he could close the ledger. Her burned hand was bandaged, but triumph had returned to her face. "The ring is old," she said. "The pack will accept me when they learn I carry your heir." Adrian went motionless. Celeste placed his hand against her abdomen and released a measured pregnancy scent. Outside the study, Gideon announced the news before Adrian had agreed to speak. Cheers rose uncertainly from the courtyard, but Adrian felt suspicion. Celeste had shared his bed once, after Gideon poured a ceremonial wine that blurred hours from Adrian's memory. The timing was possible. Her scent seemed convincing, yet the ring had rejected her violently. He ordered Marcus to summon Naomi Pierce in secret and forbade Gideon from entering the wing. For the first time, his counsel's certainty looked like a trap. Naomi arrived before dawn carrying her black medical case and no royal escort. She examined Celeste behind locked doors while Adrian waited in the corridor. The rejected Luna ring clenched inside Evelyn's wedding cloth. Minutes stretched until the healer emerged, pale with anger. She shut the door behind her and met Adrian's eyes. "There is no heir," Naomi said. "There is no pregnancy. Someone manufactured scent to deceive the crown." Frostfang's oldest archive lay beneath the northern keep, where no torch burned without a sovereign's permission. Elias led Evelyn and Rowan down a spiral staircase, cut into black stone. The moonstone pendant rested against Evelyn's chest, warm for the first time since severance. At the bottom, Elias pressed the cracked Luna ring into a shallow carving. Hidden locks released with a groan, exposing a cedar chest bound in tarnished silver. The scent of dry paper and cedar escaped when the lid opened. Inside lay a folded royal charter, a woman's journal, and a second moonstone pendant shaped like a rising sun. Evelyn recognized the handwriting on the journal before Elias spoke. It belonged to her mother, Lady Helena Hart, whose death had been recorded as fever. Evelyn touched the cover, and grief moved through her with terrible, silent precision again. Elias unfolded the charter beneath a glass lamp. Two signatures appeared at its base, King Aldrich Blackwood and Queen Seraphine Solstice. The original compact named Nightfall a dual crown, founded by Wolf and Moonblood together. The female Solstice line held equal authority over land, succession, and trial. Moonmere was never a vassal territory, Elias said. It was the surviving seat of the Second Crown, hidden after a palace purge. Rowan studied the final pages while Evelyn opened her mother's journal. The entries described council threats, forged inheritance records, and Helena's discovery that Gideon Vane had ordered every reference to Solstice queens removed from Nightfall's schools. Her final entry ended 3 days before her death. She had planned to present the charter publicly and name Evelyn as heir. Instead, her carriage overturned on a dry road guarded by Vane soldiers. Evelyn's fingers closed around the pendant until its edges cut her palm. She had mourned a sick mother for 16 years. Now she understood Helena had died protecting a future the council intended to steal. Rowan moved nearer, then stopped before touching her. "You decide what happens next," he said. That restraint nearly broke her. Adrian had reached, not to comfort, but to guide her toward the choice he preferred. Rowan admitted he had suspected Evelyn's importance months earlier. The letters signed E.H. contained legal references known only to Moonmere's hereditary stewards. He had wondered whether their author belonged to the erased bloodline, but suspicion was not proof. "I knew you were the strategist," he said. "I did not know you were the heir." Evelyn searched his face and found no triumph, only concern over what truth would cost her. Elias turned the charter to its last surviving clause. If a reigning king used marriage, coercion, or concealed intent to absorb Solstice territory, the female heir could summon a high moon trial. Until judgment, every disputed title would freeze. Adrian's attempt to claim Moonmere had endangered his authority over Nightfall. The marriage meant to erase Evelyn had created the opening through which she could place the king himself on trial. The power came with a condition. The charter could not be invoked from foreign soil or through another ruler. Evelyn had to cross Nightfall's border, enter the Great Hall, and call the trial in her own voice before the assembled Pax. Gideon already controlled the council notices and royal guard. Returning would place her within reach of those who had killed Helena and prepared Evelyn's removal before her wedding vows. Mara entered with reports from the southern pass. Nightfall troops were fortifying the border, and Gideon had circulated Evelyn's portrait with an execution order disguised as arrest authority. Rowan offered an escort of 500 soldiers. Evelyn refused the number. An army would let Gideon call her an invader. She requested 12 guards, Elias, the charter, and copies of ledgers connecting House Vane to the stolen grain and manufactured war. Before dawn, Evelyn stood beside the archive table wearing Frostfang black over Moonmere silver. She placed her mother's pendant around her neck, wrapped the cracked Luna ring inside the charter, and sealed the evidence case herself. Rowan asked once whether she was certain. Evelyn looked at Helena's final signature, then toward the road leading south. "They wanted a marriage," she said. "I will give them a trial before the moon." Naomi placed the sealed medical file on Adrian's desk before sunrise. The report contained blood results, scent analysis, and the physician's signature. Celeste had never conceived. The pregnancy aroma came from concentrated moonroot mixed with royal wine, a compound dangerous enough to damage an alpha's judgment. Adrian read the final page twice, then asked the question Naomi feared. Who supplied it? Naomi answered, "Someone with access to Gideon's private laboratory." Celeste denied everything when guards brought her into the chamber. She lifted her bandaged hand and blamed Evelyn, claiming Frostfang healers had altered the tests. Adrian watched her tears form without changing her breathing. 6 months earlier, he would have mistaken that control for courage. Now it looked rehearsed. When he ordered her confined, Celeste dropped the mask. "You needed my father," she hissed. "Do not pretend you were innocent." Marcus arrived with a palm-sized encrypted drive taken from Gideon's war room. The device held security footage from Nightfall's corridor. On the recording, Celeste handed the wine steward a silver vial 2 hours before Adrian entered her chamber. Gideon stood beside her, instructing the steward to increase the dose if the king resisted. Adrian watched himself cross the screen afterward, unsteady, drugged, and surrounded by people who called obedience loyalty. The drive contained more than poison. Marcus opened encrypted letters ordering rogue bands to attack eastern villages, burn wagons, and leave Frostfang weapons behind. Gideon had manufactured a war, then offered his army as Nightfall's salvation. Every dead guard, every orphaned child, every council vote had strengthened House Vane. Adrian's hands closed around the edge. He had called Evelyn disloyal while rewarding the family that bled his kingdom for leverage. For the first time, Adrian understood the shape of his failure. He had not merely lost Evelyn, he had used her intelligence while doubting her warnings, accepted her loyalty while planning her removal, and delivered her mother's murderers authority they needed. Regret no longer felt romantic. It felt judicial, like a sentence spoken inside his bones. He ordered Gideon arrested, stripped House Vane of military command, and summoned the council. He was too late. Before noon, the palace bells rang the pattern reserved for invasion. Soldiers wearing Vane colors seized the armory, communications tower, and gate. Gideon entered the great hall beneath a canopy of swords. Behind him walked Celeste, freed from confinement and dressed in white. The burn around her finger was visible, but she wore a Luna ring and smiled as if magic had been replaced by theater. Gideon addressed the assembled pack through the royal broadcast system. He declared Adrian compromised by severance sickness and manipulated by a foreign king. Under emergency law, Gideon claimed temporary regency until Celeste's unborn heir could be protected. Naomi's medical file disappeared from Adrian's desk within minutes. Copies of the security footage were destroyed in the communications tower. Only Marcus's hidden duplicate drive remained. sewn inside the lining of his uniform. Adrian reached the throne room with 12 guards, but Gideon had placed archers above every entrance. Celeste stood beside the obsidian throne and watched him approach without fear. "You taught me that crowns survive through necessary sacrifices," she said. "Now you are the sacrifice." Adrian could have attacked. Instead, he ordered his guards to lower their weapons, because hundreds of pack members were trapped between the balconies and the throne. Gideon used Adrian's restraint as proof of weakness. He ordered the king confined in the war chamber and announced that Evelyn Hart had conspired with Frostfang to overthrow Nightfall. A new council notice named her enemy of the crown. The order authorized execution if she crossed the border, without trial, witness, or appeal. Celeste pressed the false ring into wax, stamping the death warrant with a title that rejected her. At the southern pass, riders carried the warrant toward Frostfang beneath storm clouds. Mara received the intercepted message beside Evelyn's convoy. Rowan offered to delay, gather more soldiers, or seek route. Evelyn read the order, folded it once, and placed it beside her mother's charter. 12 guards mounted behind her. Elias secured the evidence case. Ahead, Nightfall's gates vanished beneath rain. Evelyn gave the command, and the convoy continued south. Rain lashed Nightfall's southern gate when Evelyn's convoy emerged from the gray road. 12 Frostfang guards rode behind her, not as an invading army, but as witnesses under sovereign law. Rowan remained at her right, while Elias guarded the evidence case beneath his cloak. Above the walls, vain archers raised bows. Below them, soldiers who remembered Evelyn hesitated to obey the execution order sealed with Celeste's false ring that morning. Captain Mara rode forward and lifted the council notice for Sentry to see. "This order carries only one seal," she called. "Emergency execution requires 3. Evelyn dismounted before the closed gate, removed her mother's silver seal, and pressed it into the rain-softened wax. The false Luna mark split down the center. "Under Nightfall law," Evelyn said, "this warrant is void, and every soldier enforcing it becomes a participant in treason." A murmur moved along the battlements. One gate captain lowered his sword. His wife had survived the famine because Evelyn had opened Moonmere's stores. Another soldier remembered the healer convoy she had sent during the Eastern fever. When Gideon's commander shouted for arrows, no bowstring released. The gate captain faced the walls instead. "Open the gates," he ordered. Iron chains groaned, and Nightfall admitted the woman it had condemned home. Smoke rose beyond the inner wall before Evelyn reached the courtyard. Gideon's men had set fire to the granary, intending to blame Frostfang and starve the capital into obedience. Panic surged through the streets. Rowan reached for command, but Evelyn raised her hand. "This is my city," she said. Then she ordered the bell tower to sound 3 short peals, followed by one long, activating evacuation plan she had designed. Hidden cistern valves opened beneath the granary. Moonmere-trained workers broke side doors, while villagers formed bucket lines along marked alleys. Evelyn sent children toward the chapel, healers toward the smoke, and soldiers to protect the grain exits, rather than chase vain banners. Within 20 minutes, the flames were contained. A crowd gathered in rain, chanting Evelyn's name, not because of bloodline, marriage, or Rowan, but because they remembered her work. Inside the palace, Adrian waited under guard in the war chamber. When Evelyn entered, his face changed with relief, shame, and something close to hope. She remained beside the door. He dismissed the guards, then placed a folded contract on the table. "I found this in Gideon's archive," he said. "It is the marriage draft." Evelyn recognized her name beside clauses she had never been shown or allowed to read. Adrian did not excuse himself. He turned to the page and pointed at his signature beneath a transfer clause. After Moonmere's title passed to Nightfall, Evelyn could be removed for instability and confined without review. "I knew the clause existed," he admitted. "I believed I could protect you after the transfer." Evelyn's laugh carried no humor. "You planned to save me from a cage you agreed to build for me." He flinched, but did not look away. "I was wrong." Evelyn lifted the contract. "Wrong is misjudging a border. This was consent to erase me." Adrian's wolf pressed against his eyes, desperate and silent. He offered her the obsidian throne, Moonmere's restoration, and his confession. Evelyn folded the paper carefully. You do not get to offer what was never yours." Then she walked out, carrying the proof of his betrayal. In the great hall, Gideon occupied the dais, while Celeste stood beside him wearing the false ring. Evelyn entered through smoke-stained doors, with Rowan, Mara, Elias, and Nightfall soldiers behind her. Rowan stopped one pace before the center aisle, allowing Evelyn to continue alone. She displayed the solstice seal, voided Gideon's emergency regency, and invoked the high moon trial. The chandeliers trembled as the pack answered with a unified howl. Celeste's confidence cracked, but Gideon ordered his archers to fire. Before they could release, Marcus appeared above the gallery and projected the execution warrant beside Adrian's marriage contract. Every hidden clause glowed beneath moonlight ink. Evelyn placed both documents before the throne. Adrian entered behind her, unarmed, and faced the silent pack. Beneath his signature, one sentence darkened like fresh blood. "The bride may be removed after transfer of title." The high moon trial began beneath the glass roof of Nightfall's great hall, where moonlight fell across the obsidian throne like a blade. Every pack leader, council elder, soldier, and sovereign witness stood within the circle of law. Evelyn entered alone, carrying the royal charter in both hands. Rowan remained behind the witness line. Adrian stood unarmed beside Marcus. Gideon and Celeste faced them beneath banners, stripped of ceremonial authority. Elias placed the charter beneath the moonstone lamp. Ancient ink awakened, revealing the signatures of King Aldrich Blackwood and Queen Seraphine Solstice. Evelyn set the cracked lunar ring beside them. When she touched it, silver light spilled across the table. When Adrian reached forward, the stone darkened instantly. A murmur swept through the hall. The ring had not rejected a woman. It had rejected a marriage built without shared power. Naomi testified first. She opened Celeste's medical file and described the moonroot compound used to imitate pregnancy, weaken judgment, and distort scent. Then Marcus projected the corridor footage above the throne. Celeste appeared with the silver vial. Gideon appeared beside her. The wine steward accepted their instructions. No one spoke while Adrian watched his own drugged figure cross the recording, walking toward a trap he had once defended as choice. Marcus next opened the stolen grain ledger. Payment codes linked Harrowvale trading to Gideon's private army. Encrypted letters ordered rogue attacks on eastern villages and commanded the raiders to leave Frostfang weapons behind. Families in the gallery began to weep as names of the dead were read aloud. Gideon called the documents forged. Mara answered by producing the courier seals, each recovered from the men who carried his orders. Elias then read Helena Hart's final journal entry, naming Gideon as the official who threatened her before the carriage crash. Evelyn did not look at Gideon. She looked at the pack members who had been taught her mother died of fever. The betrayal was larger than one wedding. It had erased queens, rewritten law, and trained generations to believe that women could serve crowns, but never possess authority beside them. At last, Evelyn placed Adrian's marriage contract beneath the moonlight. Hidden ink surfaced along the final clause, confirming that Moonmere would transfer before she was declared unstable and confined. The presiding elder asked Adrian whether he had known the clause existed when he signed. Silence then stretched across the hall. Adrian looked at Evelyn, but she offered him no rescue. "Yes," he said, "I knew, and I signed it anyway." The admission struck harder than accusation. Adrian did not blame Gideon, the council, or war. He confessed that fear of Evelyn's bloodline and confidence in his control had made the bargain seem acceptable. He had believed he could steal her rights, preserve his crown, and soften the prison with affection. Evelyn heard regret in every word, but regret did not transform consent into innocence or return her mother to life. Gideon moved before judgment could be called. He shouted that the trial was a Frostfang coup, then ordered the archers to fire. None obeyed. Celeste screamed and seized the silver dagger from the evidence table. She lunged toward the charter, intending to destroy the document that could restore Evelyn's crown. Rowan stepped forward, but Evelyn was faster. She caught Celeste's wrist, turned the blade, and drove her to the floor. Evelyn pinned Celeste with one knee and removed the dagger without drawing blood. "You wanted recognition," she said, "but you chose men who recognized only your usefulness." Celeste's fury collapsed into terror as guards closed around her. Gideon tried to reach the eastern doors. Marcus blocked him. Adrian could have killed the elder. Instead, he surrendered Gideon to the law, accepting that vengeance would not erase his own willing signature. The presiding elder declared the solstice crown restored and asked Evelyn to choose. She could reclaim Adrian, take the obsidian throne, or depart under Rowan's protection. Hundreds waited while kings watched her. Evelyn lifted the royal charter and faced the pack. "My first answer is not about either man," she said. "It is about every woman taught that service is her highest title." Then she prepared to name her future. When Evelyn finished speaking, the great hall remained silent beneath the moon. She did not reach for Adrian's throne or Rowan's offered protection. Instead, she raised the restored solstice charter and declared Moonmere an independent crown, governed by its own laws, its own council, and its own queen. The pack's silence broke into a howl as women in every rank understood what her choice meant for them and their daughters. She then turned to the council and invoked the Solstice Reform Clause. No Luna could ever again be removed, confined, or replaced through a private agreement. Every royal marriage would require independent counsel, public consent, and equal property rights. The surviving elders bowed as the new law passed. Evelyn had not only reclaimed a title stolen from her family, she had changed the rules that allowed the theft to happen. Gideon Vane was sentenced to life imprisonment beneath the northern fortress, stripped of rank, land, and command. Celeste lost every title she had claimed, and the wealth of House Vane was seized to compensate families harmed by the staged border attacks. She wept only when the false Luna ring was removed. Evelyn watched without triumph. Punishment was necessary, but another woman's ruin could never become the foundation of her healing. Adrian stood before the assembled packs and accepted permanent severance. He surrendered sole control of Nightfall to a 3-member regency until the people could choose a lawful ruler. When he approached Evelyn, he offered no defense and asked for no forgiveness. "I loved what you gave me more than I honored who you were," he said. Evelyn answered, "Then learn from the cost, because I will not pay it twice." 3 months later, spring returned to Moonmere. Rivers broke free from winter ice, grain fields brightened, and healer houses reopened under Evelyn's seal. She ruled from a circular council hall with no raised throne. Farmers, warriors, widows, and former Omegas all held seats there. The cracked Luna ring was melted down, its silver divided into 2 separate royal seals, neither designed to bind one ruler beneath another again by law. Rowan arrived without soldiers, banners, or an escort of nobles. He came carrying one document and waited outside the council chamber until Evelyn invited him inside. The Equal Crown Covenant recognized Moonmere and Frostfang as independent realms, preserved separate armies and treasuries, and granted both rulers equal veto power. Rowan had signed every page before coming. He left the final amendments blank, knowing Evelyn would write her own terms freely. Evelyn read the covenant twice. Then she asked the question that had lived beneath every act of praise since Nightfall. "Would you still want me if I managed no kingdom, solved no war, and brought you no territory?" Rowan did not answer quickly. He stepped closer, but stopped beyond her reach. "I want the woman who can say no to me," he said, "and know that I will still remain." For the first time, Evelyn believed a promise without surrendering herself to it. She added 3 clauses. No claim over Moonmere's bloodline, no transfer of land through marriage, and no command over her council. Rowan signed them without negotiation. Only then did Evelyn place her seal beside his. The covenant joined 2 kingdoms without consuming either one. The witnesses bowed to both rulers, and neither stood upon a higher step. At dawn, they stood beside the river where Moonmere's first queen had taken her oath. Rowan offered no ring of ownership. Evelyn wore her mother's pendant and carried her own seal. Their vows promised partnership, not obedience. Truth, not protection, bought with silence. When Rowan asked whether she chose him, Evelyn looked toward the people she had freed, then back at the man who had never demanded she become smaller. "I choose you," she said, "because beside you, I remain myself." The sun struck both seals, sending silver light across the water. Once, Dawn had nearly completed a bargain meant to erase her. Now it witnessed a choice no council had purchased. Evelyn did not become Rowan's Luna, and Rowan did not become her master. Queen and king stood side by side, while Moonmere welcomed a future built by dignity. And this is where Evelyn's story finally comes to rest. Are you still here with me? If you are, then maybe this story touched something familiar. Maybe you have been betrayed by someone you trusted. misunderstood by people who never asked for your side, or hurt so deeply that staying quiet felt like the only way to keep your dignity. Evelyn was in pain, but she did not beg for love from someone who had already turned it into a bargain. She walked away, not because leaving was easy, but because remaining would have cost her the last piece of herself. That is the quiet strength worth remembering. We cannot control who disappoints us, what others choose to believe, or whether they regret losing us. We can control what we accept next. Choosing yourself does not mean becoming cold. It means refusing to keep handing your heart to people who treat it like borrowed property. And yes, rebuilding your life can feel awkward at first. Even strong people occasionally stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m. and question everything. But dignity grows each time you stop chasing an explanation and start protecting your peace. If this story spoke to you, comment one word, dignity, and gently like, share, and subscribe for more stories about women who lose everything except themselves.